What if the smartest, like most calculated survival strategy in the modern world isn't actually about acquiring more knowledge, but
But actively pretending to be completely oblivious.
right, actively playing dumb? Today, we're looking at a single, honestly pretty bizarre puzzle that makes a surprisingly compelling case for why playing dumb might just be the ultimate genius move.
It's a fascinating premise, yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
So welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Usually, our source material is this massive mountain of data, like research papers, long-form articles, historical record.
The heavy stuff.
Exactly. You sit down with the expectation that we're going to sift through all that noise to find the signal for you. But today, the mountain is, well, it's entirely missing. We are looking at a single image.
Literally just one image.
Yeah, just a title and one incredibly strange, twisting sentence.
It is the absolute definition of brevity. But if you try to just skim past it, you completely miss the trapdoor.
Oh, for sure.
It's designed to look like this throwaway thought, but underneath, it's operating like a really dense piece of behavioral psychology.
Okay, let me share the text with you so you can hear the sort of strange rhythm of it.
Go for it.
So the image starts with a two-word title, Machiavellian Mathematica. And right below that is this single thought. It's off just a way easier to know a whole bunch of nothing about nothing, even if I do so happen to know a little bit of nothing about something.
I love how it just loops back on itself in a way that feels almost like purposefully disorienting.
It really does.
Okay.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Right.
Our mission today is to completely deconstruct this philosophical riddle. We're going to treat it like a linguistic puzzle, right? One that tests how you, the listener, process the concepts of knowledge and strategy and ignorance.
But before we even get to the mechanics of that twisted sentence, I think we have to look at the warning label on the box.
You mean the title?
Yeah, that title, Machiavellian Mathematica. We have to ask, what is the author actually trying to signal to us by smashing those two specific words together?
That's a great point, because they don't seem to belong next to each other.
Not at all. What's fascinating here is that if we look at the underlying mechanism of those words, we're looking at a severe, almost violent collision of concepts.
Right.
Let's just isolate the first part. Machiavellian. In behavioral science and political theory, that implies an architecture of self-interest.
It's reputation management.
Exactly. Deception, the manipulation of power dynamics. Someone operating on Machiavellian principles is playing a game that you don't even realize you're a participant in.
They're hiding their hand.
Right. Their outward actions are specifically designed to camouflage their internal strategy. It is inherently subjective, shadowy, and, very fluid.
Which makes the second word feel like a total contradiction.
Completely.
Because mathematica, math is the opposite of a shadow.
Yeah.
Math is transparent, it's axiomatic. If you follow the rules of a mathematical proof, you arrive at an undeniable truth, right? Regardless of your personal agenda. Math just doesn't lie.
Precisely. So the juxtaposition forces this intense cognitive dissonance. Because how do you quantify manipulation?
Yeah.
How do you apply a rigorous, undeniable proof to the art of deception?
It kind of feels like, okay, imagine you're trying to win a game of poker,
Right.
but you're aggressively showing everyone at the table a detailed spreadsheet of your bluffs.
Right, which totally defeats the purpose of the bluff.
Exactly. It shouldn't work. The spreadsheet literally ruins the bluff. So I'm wondering, does this title warn you, the listener, that the seemingly nonsensical quote to follow is actually this highly calculated, logical formula for manipulation?
I think it's literally an instruction manual for the text.
An instruction manual, yeah.
By framing it as Machiavellian Mathematica, the author completely strips away the assumption that the quote is just a casual, bumbling observation.
Like it's not just a guy rambling on his porch.
Exactly. The title demands that we read the subsequent text as a strategic equation. It's a literal formula for surviving the modern information ecosystem.
Okay, wow.
And if we accept that premise, our job today is to solve the equation.
I love that. So if the title warns us that we're dealing with a mathematical formula for manipulation, the obvious next step is to figure out the variables, right?
Yeah, we need to establish the baseline of this formula.
Right. So the text opens with, it's off just way easier to know a whole bunch of nothing about nothing. Let's just pause there.
It's a heavy start, honestly.
It is, because there's a specific causality at play here. It's explicitly framing ignorance not as like a lack of education or a moral failing.
No, it's framing it as a convenience, an optimization strategy.
Well, easier.
And to understand why it's an optimization strategy, you really have to look at the environment you're operating in every single day.
The attention economy.
Exactly. We live in an attention economy. The cognitive load placed on the average person right now is just historically unprecedented.
Oh, completely.
Society constantly demands that you hold an informed opinion on this staggering array of topics like geopolitics, macroeconomics, cultural shifts.
Ethical dilemmas, yeah.
Right. All of it.
The social contract right now basically states that if you exist in public or even just online, you are expected to have a take.
Always.
And not just a take, but like a defensible, well-researched stance.
And engaging with that social contract requires an enormous expenditure of mental energy. It creates immense cognitive friction for you.
It's exhausting.
It really is.
Okay.
So, mathematically speaking, what is the lowest energy state a human mind can exist in within that highly pressurized environment?
Oh, I see.
It's a perfect zero, knowing nothing about nothing.
Wow.
By projecting total ignorance, you short-circuit that social contract entirely. You just opt out of the cognitive tax that society tries to levy on you.
That makes so much sense.
And notice the text doesn't claim this state is noble or ethical or intellectually honest. It merely observes the raw utility of it. It is way easier.
But does that actually hold up in practice?
What do you mean?
Well, if you look at the specific wording, the author doesn't just say they know nothing. They actively quantify it. They say it's easier to know a whole bunch of nothing. Which is weird, right? Why quantify an absence?
That's a really good point.
Does maintaining a state of total ignorance actually require mass? Because it sounds less like a passive state of just, not reading the news, and more like they are actively accumulating a giant wall of nothingness to put between themselves and the world.
That is a crucial distinction. The phrase, a whole bunch of nothing, completely shifts the physics of the analogy here.
Okay, how so?
Think of it like a vacuum chamber.
A vacuum chamber, okay.
Right, because a vacuum in space isn't just an empty area, it's a measurable physical state.
Sure.
And creating a vacuum on Earth where atmospheric pressure constantly wants to, crush inward and fill that void.
Oh, right. It takes force to keep it empty.
Exactly. It requires an incredibly strong, rigid container.
Yeah.
The pressure is the outside world constantly throwing information and demands at you.
So the news, social media, your boss.
All of it. So to maintain a state of knowing a whole bunch of nothing actually requires active, exhausting deflection.
Wow. So it's not bliss at all.
Not even a little.
It's not the relaxed state of someone who just happens to be uninformed. You have to actively cultivate the void.
Yeah.
You have to perform the role of the oblivious person so that people stop trying to hand you information.
Yes. You build the vacuum chamber.
Yeah.
Because if you just say, I don't know the answer to that, the natural human response from the other person is, oh, let me explain it to you.
Right. Let me teach you.
Exactly. But if you present a massive, impenetrable wall of fundamental cluelessness, a whole bunch of nothing about nothing, people give up.
They just walk away.
They realize the effort required to bring you up to speed just isn't worth their time. You have successfully repelled the cognitive burden.
That is brilliant. You've achieved this dark equilibrium. You've built your giant protective vacuum chamber, and it's making your life way easier.
But then?
Right as the formula seems perfectly stable, the author introduces a massive destabilizing variable.
The equation breaks, or, well, more accurately, it pivots.
Yeah, the second half of the quote completely shatters the illusion of total oblivion. The author says they do all of this, even if I do so happen to know a little bit of nothing about something.
It's quite a twist.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we're moving from a broad unknown into a highly specific known unknown.
The psychology shifts completely in that back half. Let's visualize the contrast between the two states described.
Okay, yeah. To visualize this, let's use an analogy for you, the listener.
I love your analogies.
Imagine you have a massive cavernous warehouse, and the sign on the outside says, everything I don't know.
Right, the whole bunch of nothing.
Exactly. You walk inside, and it's just vast, empty space. This represents the first half of the quote. The whole bunch of nothing about nothing. It's an easy space to manage because there's just nothing in it.
It's just a void.
Yeah, a void. But then you walk toward the center of this massive empty warehouse, and sitting right in the middle of the floor is one tiny, heavily reinforced, locked box.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
And the box has a very specific label on it. Maybe it says fiscal policy or workplace conflict. But the box itself, it's also completely empty.
That is exactly the dynamic at play here.
You don't have the information, the something on the label, but you are acutely, painfully aware of the box. You are aware of the exact shape and location of your ignorance.
And that awareness fundamentally changes your relationship to the information.
How so?
Well, the first state, the warehouse, is total oblivion. You don't know the facts, and you don't even know that the facts exist. You are blissfully untroubled by your lack of knowledge.
Right.
But the second state, the locked box, is a state of profound vulnerability. It's what psychologists would call a targeted blind spot.
A targeted blind spot.
Yeah. You lack the facts, but you understand the context of what you are missing. You recognize the something.
But let me push back on how this fits into the formula for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because if you're aware of that specific locked box, hasn't the bliss of the empty warehouse just been totally ruined?
How do you mean?
Well, by admitting that you know a little bit of nothing about something,
Yeah.
you've introduced anxiety, right? You've admitted there's a specific gap in your armor.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that fit into a mathematical equation that is supposed to be optimizing for what is way easier? You've introduced a chaotic variable into the Mathematica equation.
It fits perfectly, actually, because the first half of the equation isn't ruined by the second half. The first half is the camouflage for the second half.
Wait, walk me through the causality there.
Look at the connective tissue of the sentence, the phrase, even if.
Okay.
The author says, it's off just a way easier, even if I do so happen to know.
Right, even if.
They aren't presenting two conflicting states of being. They are presenting a cause and a deliberately engineered effect.
Ah, I see.
The realization that they possess a specific blind spot, that they know a little bit of nothing about something, is a source of threat.
Right, because if society finds out you are aware of a topic but ignorant of the details, society will pressure you to open the box.
Exactly. They will expect you to do the heavy lifting of learning.
So to avoid the pressure of having to learn about that one specific, terrifying little box, you build a massive empty warehouse around it.
Exactly. The total ignorance isn't real, it's a facade.
Why?
The speaker is admitting to a highly manipulative, highly calculated strategy. They are engineering a state of broad, bumbling cluelessness just to hide the very specific anxiety of their targeted ignorance.
So what does this all mean when we synthesize the whole thing? Like, we take the warning label, Machiavellian Mathematica, and we apply it to this weird recursive confession.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
The final result of the equation is essentially the strategy of weaponized incompetence, isn't it?
or feigned cluelessness.
Yeah.
If we zoom out and look at how this mechanism functions in the real world, it's a profoundly effective defense mechanism.
It really is.
When you broadcast a massive void of knowledge, you lower everyone's expectations of you to absolute zero. If you play the fool, nobody asks you to solve the complex problem.
Right. Nobody asks you to mediate the conflict. Nobody expects you to carry the cognitive burden.
Which is incredibly dark when you think about it.
It's super dark. It means the person who seems the most hopelessly uninformed might actually be the most strategically aware person in the room.
Exactly. They aren't stumbling through life. They have calculated exactly how much nothing they need to project in order to protect their energy.
And that brings us right back to the inherent tension of the title. The strategy is Machiavellian because it is deeply self-serving and manipulative.
Yep.
You are offloading the burden of knowledge and responsibility onto everyone around you by pretending you aren't capable of carrying it.
But it is Mathematica because it is a cold, calculated equation of energy conservation.
It really is math.
A broad, manufactured negative of the blind spot.
It's essentially social tax evasion.
That's a great way to put it.
You are literally dodging the responsibility of being a competent participant in society. But what fascinates me is the tone the author chooses to reveal this strategy.
The tone is everything.
The wording, it's off just a way easier. I do so happen to, it sounds like someone shrugging their shoulders in a pair of overalls. It sounds totally harmless.
The text is performing the very strategy it is describing.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
That is the ultimate proof of the equation. The author is wrapping a sharp, cynical, Machiavellian truth inside a layer of folksy, bumbling nonsense.
It's brilliant.
They are presenting you with a whole bunch of nothing so you don't notice the precise, calculated something hidden inside it.
That completely flips the script on how we consume information. It forces you to ask, like, when someone presents themselves as uninformed, are they actually lacking capacity? Or are they executing a highly optimized survival strategy at your expense?
It demands that we look past the surface presentation. And honestly, it proves that sometimes the most profound insights into human behavior aren't found in massive, dense volumes of research.
Right.
Sometimes the most revealing psychological blueprints are hidden in the quiet, calculated contradictions of a single sentence.
Just to trace the path we've taken today, we started with a source that looked like an error. Just 2 lines of text featuring a contradictory title and a grammatical knot.
But by trusting the framework,
Right, by treating the text as a literal logical equation, we uncovered the psychological mechanics of weaponized ignorance.
we broke down how the modern pressure to be constantly informed creates an unbearable cognitive load for you.
And we saw how a strategic mind might counter that load not by learning more, but by actively cultivating a massive void of knowledge, a giant empty warehouse, specifically to hide their anxiety about the one small thing they know they don't understand.
And honestly, if we analyze our own behaviors, there is a dark, calculated comfort in that mechanism.
Definitely.
In a world that constantly demands our attention and expertise, retreating into the void is an incredibly tempting defense strategy. We all utilize varying degrees of this equation.
Oh, absolutely.
We all selectively play dumb to protect our mental bandwidth.
It's true. Sometimes pretending you don't know how the printer works is the only way to avoid becoming the office IT person for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
We recognize the math because we use the math.
But acknowledging the sheer calculation required to effectively play the fool brings us to a rather profound realization about the alternative.
Okay, let's hear it.
This raises an important question. If we accept the premise of Machiavellian Mathematica, if it truly takes the calculated, strategic mind of a mastermind to successfully engineer a convincing state of knowing nothing, what does that say about the cognitive load required to be genuinely competent?
Oh, wow.
What kind of impossible, exhausting math is required for those of us who are out here every single day desperately trying to actually know a little bit of something?
If faking ignorance takes a genius, actually learning might just be the hardest equation of all.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It really is. And that is a pretty heavy thought to carry with you. Thank you so much for joining us on this surprisingly profound deep dive into a single enigmatic image.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope it gives you a new lens through which to view the people around you and, encourages you to keep questioning the hidden calculations behind the behaviors you see every single day. Until next time.